Okay, no problem. So, folks, questions?
I've been told that there's a Q&A, so if anybody has any questions, by all means. Were you going to take, by the way, the question? Should I be up there instead of
Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold this.
Oh, that's cool too.
Okay. So go there, and I'm going to turn it around. I haven't done this before, but maybe we'll try it this way. So no, go back if you can. Because.
Okay. Yes, sir. Very interesting comments regarding the socio-economic element to belief systems. How do you account for, I'm just curious what your explanations were, the American level of beliefs and how strong their economy is, their world, in their little corner of the world, and yet religiosity is so high. What is your answer to that?
America has always been the caveat to that general argument. Because America is a very developed society, possibly even the most developed society on earth in terms of some features, not in terms of the features that seem to give the most acceptance of secular values. So if we're talking post-Enlightenment values of, say sexual emancipation, equality, kind of the belief in freedom of expression, those kinds of things have been suppressed much more in the United States, even if you can survive much more easily and they're very technologically sophisticated. Even just a few years back in 2015, the United States was ranked, I want to say, like 30-something in terms of their general educational ability, in terms of standardized testing among their students. So I personally would attribute that to a kind of lag time in particular socioeconomic factors. And to reinforce the idea that as soon as we kind of achieve these levels of rising above the basic Darwinian bottom line of survival, that it is not a guaranteed transition, an automatic one-way street towards secularism where it just seems to happen overnight. I mean, just like biological evolution can choose to select for particular features, if nothing is actively selecting against those features, they'll persist until something is. I mean, the dodo bird was doing just fine until we got there, right? Because it was fine for its environment. I kind of see the United States.
With the battle of ideology with communism, the mid-50s, the resurgence of religiosity, would that have been an abnormal aberration in this American phenomenon?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, in terms of Soviet communism, if that's what you're talking about, yeah, they were an atheistic society. It was genuinely forced from top down. They cracked down, repressed authoritarianly on churches and active religious belief. When something is forced on an unwilling populace, they are not just going to convert and feel deep down what you kind of tell them to believe, because it still hasn't kind of reached that level yet. The rest of the social environment has not approached anything like what we see the environment kind of needs to be like for secularism to kind of take root and flourish. So that's how I kind of look at those social areas.
There. Anybody else?
I have a question. Maybe it's one question, 2 points. You talk about if population of good people has a change in their society and become more advanced. Sorry? If a society become more advanced, they will they will start to adapt the more secular approach, or they will become less fanatic. But I'm not seeing this happening in some parts of the world. I'm not seeing this happening in Turkey. I'm not seeing this happening in Indonesia. Right. Maybe it's applicable to Christian religions. It's not applied to everything to other religions. Also, when you mentioned that groups, if the group was in a particular environment and this environment changed, it could change their way of thinking. I don't see this happening with immigrants coming from violent areas, coming to the West. They still hold on to their belief, or I can say still have those radical ideas. So as they came initially with them. So do you see, I've seen you talking about the differences between the societies, and we are post-secular. How do you see this differentiate between the among the different religious groups? In the West, I'm seeing it progressing, but I'm not seeing it everywhere.
For For sure. So, I mean, and again, I don't usually see it as kind of a one-way automatic street where as soon as a society achieves this kind of level of, we'll call it kind of social fitness and function, that they automatically just become secular. And in the case of a place like Turkey and like Indonesia, these places historically have basically been a revolving door of unstable and authoritarian governments, where even if we see on paper, secular government, like in Turkey, we still see them cracking down ruthlessly on specific pieces, specific parts of their cultural group, and not even usually based on their religion per se, but to stop other groups from gaining power. So cracking down on Christians or Muslims for being too vocal and outwards about their belief. And in Indonesia, I mean, it looked like there might be promise for a while with kind of a more or less secular leaders. But again, more of a revolving door of people who tend to crack down. These people are surrounded, Turkey in particular, surrounded by instability in the countries around them. Their way of life is in no way guaranteed. And I feel like that level of uncertainty about the future in terms of the gains that they may have made, in terms of their scientific advancement or their cultural dialogue, that there's no guarantee that can continue even into the future, where people are just waiting for the next gang of thugs to potentially take power from the Turkish government. So that's kind of how I explain why that hasn't maybe caught fire, so to speak, sooner, because it's still very unstable. Does that answer your question? Okay.
You mentioned twice that you didn't want to be mistaken for a Sam Harris or neo Hitchens, and I was wondering why you were so reluctant.
Because I view Chris Hitchens and Sam Harris as secular extremists, much more than people who want to open a dialogue and actually advance with people. I mean, Sam Harris in particular, and even like after his last book was written, just reading like his tweets on Twitter or some of his PR releases, it's usually demonizing and vilifying an entire faith, like the Muslim community, for people who act extremely in that religion, as though we're not supposed to realize that extremists are not the average, right? When writers like Sam Harris usually paint them that way. I'm much more along the lines of Noam Chomsky. If anyone here has ever read Noam Chomsky, he believes that we can solve the problem of ISIS, not by, well, I mean, militarily if we need to, obviously, but the conditions which give rise to an ideology like ISIS, to fix broken societies, not to actually go in and nation build, which is usually a smoke screen for much more ulterior nefarious things anyway, not to go in and actually have a presence, but to help these people better themselves in terms of access to education, in terms of access to resources. I mean, the people in parts of the world where groups like ISIS take form, places like Syria and Lebanon and places like that, people in these areas do not enjoy the fact that their states are failed states. If we look at some of the literature that scholars over there write about it, there's a long line about how exactly the West was able to kind of control world hegemony and how they don't like it. And they would very much like to move on and just be a prosperous society on that.
I personally don't see Hitchens and Harris as demonizing people. They kind of demonize and criticize ideas. But
for sure, yeah. And in the latest Sam Harris book that's specifically about Islam, Islam and the Future of Tolerance, I think, where he wrote it with kind of a... Absolutely. So he's talking to the other guy in the blog. He's basically talking in completely monolithic terms. How if you were to look at, say, the Muslim scripture quite literally, if you take it the most literally and be, in his mind, the most authentic believer, it literally does tell you to kill non-believers, wherever you happen to find them. But obviously, all Muslims are not like that. Christianity has its own very violent verses about finding people who don't fit in with your in-group and rooting them out and taking over their stuff. But we don't see people acting like that in different societies. So to me, it's not the but.
But again, in the cases that you mentioned, they always make the point, it's not as if it has nothing to do with Islam or with Christianity,
Absolutely.
But it's not, but it is, you can't claim that it has nothing to do with it. It's
Absolutely.
So I think that your criticism is, I'd say, unfair.
When we think about people who are rationalizing inherently irrational beliefs about the way their environment seems to function. Religion is just a symptom of that rationalization. And leaders, charismatic leaders, all throughout history have found ways to dupe an unwitting populace, possibly a very ignorant populace, into believing certain kinds of ideas. So duping unsuspecting people into going to war with other people. History is replete with generals demonizing and vilifying another population to convince people to go to war with them for particular reasons. And we see that happening a lot, where we can vilify a particular people so that they become kind of subhuman. And why I don't like the Harris kind of approach to that is that we have clear examples to the contrary. To go ahead and demonize them only promotes, I think, less dialogue.
Further along that discussion, I see your point. That makes sense. Have you heard the term the Overton window?
No.
It was popularized by the leader of the American Atheists, David Silverman. And this is a psychology term, and I'm not an expert on this, but there may be some value to the Harris-Hitchens extremism element that you were pointing out, that they tend to shift the window of what's considered acceptable in modern society, where even the term atheism it used to be so vilified, but today it may be more acceptable to even say that, because we have elements in this discussion that are very far, and what it does is it allows this Overton window to be shifted sufficiently that even in the center of this window of discussion it becomes more normalized too. So there may be some value in the extreme views of the Hitchens or Harrison type of talks.
Absolutely.
Because ultimately, with regards to your book, this post-secular, almost utopia that I'd like to see, seems so far off, especially when you're mentioning how easily dictatorships can stifle any kind of discussion that could actually result in a path in that direction.
Right. Well, I mean, if there's any positive kind of spin on that, the world, in terms of the numbers, is becoming more democratic, and people are less likely to vote themselves and come out of like this themselves. But anyway, why I'm additionally at least a little bit suspicious of writings like guys like Sam Harris and Dawkins, who are very animated atheists, very condescending, is that generals all throughout history who have vilified and demonized particular people always have another reason for doing so. And I suspect that people who are very animated in vilifying the entire culture of people based on what a few members of their faith do may sometimes just do that to write some compelling copy so that they'll pick up their books. I mean, I have that ulterior kind of suspicion. But anyway.
Yes, sir. You mentioned that ISIS is basically related to those guys coming from the Middle East with other privileges, or they do not have enough resources, or they are poor people. But actually, ISIS is based mainly on those coming from Europe and some parts of the world. Many of them are doctors, some of them are computer technology, the engineers, and it's not about being poor that you will join a group like ISIS. It's about the ideology itself. It can flourish everywhere. It's not
For sure.
it's not something that they invent or they come up with to fight the ugly situation. No, it's not this functional.
Absolutely, and I've looked at the numbers of kind of like more or less white-collar ISIS members. They're definitely a minority. They do happen, but they're definitely a minority of the general kind of infantry they have. And even a well-educated person can be duped into believing silly, violent ideas, where we watched an entire culture in Nazi Germany surrounded by Christian folks who were otherwise well-meaning to be duped, even though they had access to education as well, duped into believing misguided ideas. So I believe that the outliers of otherwise very well-educated, sophisticated ISIS joiners from Europe, which I don't believe that generally they're from Europe, the majority of ISIS members, I definitely believe they're still originating in the Middle East. But I believe that because those people are outliers, they don't really affect kind of the general overall theme of your ease of being duped into misguided ideas being a result of poverty and your inaccessibility to an easy education.
With respect to the age of information around the internet, have you found anything in your research that gives you optimism for the future with the double-edged sword that the internet is?
Oh, absolutely.
Positive information and negative information.
Absolutely. That's the best thing we've got going for us is the internet, is the absolute cheapest means of gaining an education and new ideas. Even if you repress people, new ideas can travel at the speed of light as fast as Ethernet cables and satellite signals can carry them. Yeah, the internet's absolutely our best weapon in terms of gaining a future that's more tolerant and more open to new ideas. And one of the more curious ideas that I talk about in the book is how post-industrial society, in terms of having something like the internet, is actually changing the way that the human brain works. Where if you have somebody who approaches spiritual ideas and seems to believe in them more readily, their cognitive mode is very intuitive. They form these simple to follow heuristics about information they find in the outside environment. We study how if we give those people information and modes of thinking that's more analytical and rational, they more easily disbelieve the spiritual ideas thereafter. We have data to indicate that just the presence of something like the internet is promoting a more analytical cognitive mode for more people. So it may become something of a compound effect.
So it'll be almost it'll be non-linear really going forward with respect to how people are going to be more susceptible to change.
Absolutely, yeah, they have no idea.
Right. And the exponential in many ways, right?
For sure. I mean, look at how fast a usually religiously based conviction, sometimes just a morally conviction-based value system against something like gay marriage was able to take root and actually be overcome in a social group like ours. It was like, as soon as the legal proceedings followed, it was about 5 years later, right? So I mean, that's a very short amount of time for an attitude that has persisted since antiquity. So we really have no idea where the critical mass of disbelief could happen.
So it's possible your 100-year outlook could actually be significantly shorter.
Be far too conservative. We can only hope. All right.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay.